Sorry we're starting this committee a little late, but we had a lot of great discussion earlier on, so we apologize for that. Please, if you could turn off all your communication devices or at least put it on a silent mode. Again, we'd appreciate that. Call this meeting to order and introduce the members of this committee. To my left, I have Ms. Ruggles. First up, we like to, and also Mr. Chung is excused for this meeting as well. Next, we have statements from the public on agenda items. I don't see anybody here in Hilo, but we'll check with our neighboring sites. And of course, to those neighboring sites, Happy New Year. So we'll check with Pahoa. I see a testifier in Pahoa. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, council people. Happy New Year. And I hope this is going to be a really good one. And so about the issues of goals, priorities, and objectives. And I think it's very interesting in today's paper, Wayne Kawachi of Okaukaukau is walking in his slipper. He's walking from Honoka'a down to Na'alehu because he wants senior housing in Na'alehu. And I'm going to go find that guy and walk with him today. I don't know where he is, what mile marker he's on, but and I have to go get my slipper and go walk with him a little bit. And we also would like to see as a goal that we would have senior housing around Pahoa. All of the communities need this. The seniors need this. The families need this. And again, even though I see that Hilo is developing it, and I went up to go visit the Moholui. I went to go visit that facility yesterday, and it's gorgeous. And they're going to have a care center and everything. I still have to remind you, there's 9 districts, and we cannot all keep commuting to Hilo and back. Otherwise, we're going to have to build a 10-lane highway between us. Anyhow, that's about all I wanted to say. I'm sure that I want to listen to what Andy Levin has to say, and I will be quiet for the rest of that time. Thank you, and aloha.
Aloha to you as well, and thank you for your testimony. We'll move on and close public testimony. Mr. Clerk, communication, if you could please read in Communication 665.
Communication 665 requests discussion with Andy Levin, State Legislative Assistant, regarding the 2018 session of the Hawaii State Legislature. From Council Member Susan L.K. Leloy, dated December 13, 2017, seeking Mr. Levin's input on the county's priorities, goals, and objectives for the upcoming state legislative session.
Thank you, Ms. Leloy. May I have a motion, please?
Motion to file Communication 665.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Ms. Leloy, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, if I could ask Mr. Levin to come forward. Thank you for being here, Mr. Levin. Happy New Year. Just part of a backdrop, you know, last year we were kind of unaware you were hired and kind of found out actually through the newspaper. So if you wouldn't mind providing us just a little bit of a brief background on what happened last legislative session, you know, your goals, objectives, your intent there, and then what we can look forward to for this legislative session.
Make sure to turn your microphone on. There you go.
Happy New Year, and thank you for the invitation to be here. The first thing I did after accepting the mayor's offer was to come by the council to say hello to you folks, and of course most of you were not here. It was late in the afternoon, but this is a wonderful opportunity for me to be with you, and I appreciate it. Thank you. I was asked to prepare a few opening remarks, so let me deal with that.
If you could, sorry, before you start, just state your name for the record and go, and you can continue.
Okay. My name is Andy Levin. I have been hired by the mayor as the title is Hawaii State Legislative Assistant, and I'll be taking my direction from the mayor and from the Corporation Council. By way of qualifications for the position, I graduated from law school in 1969 and came to work in Hawaii County with the Legal Aid Society, serving the entire county, and I did that for 5 years. And then from 1974 to 2000, so about 25 years, I practiced law in private practice, both part-time and full-time. From 1974 to 1976, I was on that side of the table as a councilman at large. At that time, the district covered the whole island. And my trademark was that I walked the island to get elected. And what I would do was walk a certain distance and then stay overnight in the community with supporters. So for instance, when I got to Pauilo, there was a wonderful and a very brave union leader who bucked his union and supported me and let me sleep on his couch. And some of you old-timers might recognize the name of Zombie Souza. In 1976, after serving on the council for 2 years, I lost a race for State House, and I went back to practicing law. And then in 1980, was elected to the House of Representatives, where I served for 8 years. In '88, I ran for State Senate and was elected and served for 12 years. And among other things, I was chair of the Judiciary Committee at one point, chair of the Ways and Means Committee at one point, and chair of other committees as well. I then joined Mayor Kim as his executive director when he got elected in 2000 and served in that capacity for the 8 years of his 2 terms. Following that, I did a short stint at the prosecutor's office, then went into retirement briefly, and then worked on 2 federal grants that the College of Pharmacy, a lady named Karen Pellegrin, got from the federal government, 2 grants in healthcare. And I worked on a program called Beacon for 4 years, and then a program called Farm to Farm for 3 years. And then a year ago, the mayor hired me as his legislative liaison for the 2017 session, and I served in that capacity. So the functions that I anticipate for this coming year are very similar to the functions from a year ago. Number 1 is monitoring legislation that's introduced. As you know, there are a couple of thousand bills every year. We need to go through those, determine which ones affect the county or have potential impact on the county, and track them and as they work their way through the legislative session. The council has an excellent tracking system, and I've been able to tap into that system and work with John Henricks and the others who have helped put that together and keep it up to date. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity to benefit from their expertise. As the bills narrow down, preparing testimony for the mayor and working with the various departments on the key bills. I'm told that last year we did about 180 testimonies, and that was after getting a late start because I was not hired until the session had already begun. Communication and connections, as you well know, is extremely important. So want to spend time with our legislators and the key legislators at the Capitol, as well as with the governor and his staff. Sometimes in those cases I'll be able to renew relationships that I've had with them of long standing, and in some cases building new relationships. Extremely important to work with the other counties. My primary focus has been the Council of Mayors, and I've worked with the mayors' liaisons a year ago and intend to do it again. But also there is very clear recognition that it is the county councils that set the policy for the counties. So I am looking forward to working with you folks. If there's ever a time when I can be of assistance, I do hope you will call on me. And then part of the contract is to perform such other duties as the mayor may assign. And so, for instance, I'll be representing the mayor at the Waimea Community Association tomorrow night at their community association meeting. So I know that I'm on an 89-day contract. I know I'll be busy. I hope it will be a contribution to the people of the county. I certainly am aware of the mayor's passion for the communities that we represent, and that passion is very infectious. I share it with him, and will do the best I can to make good things happen. It is important, as I said, that we work in conjunction, the mayors, the councils, and the other stakeholders. I was just given the 8-SAC package, which I haven't had a chance to look at, but obviously that's going to be a great start in terms of what the council priorities may be. I recognize that the subject matter expertise does not lie with me. It lies in the departments and to some extent with you folks. So my work is not ever meant to take the place of the work that the departments are doing, but rather to complement, in some cases, provide what information I know and the experience I have with respect to how the legislature operates, what the deadlines are, and that kind of thing, and work closely with them. In terms of specific priorities, most have not yet been identified. No bills have been introduced, as you well know. But things that I would anticipate coming up, certainly we will support any infrastructure proposals that would benefit this island. TAT almost certainly will be coming up, along with perhaps other tax issues. There was a movement a year ago for the state to take over the property tax function. I suspect that will come back. There was a movement for the Department of Education to get some property tax money. I suspect that will come back. There's an effort to impose TAT on vacation rentals and bed and breakfast. And that, I think, is something that we probably do want to support, although it depends on the details. But if counties will get their fair share, then that sounds like a positive thing, and we'll be following that. Lifeguard liability was a big issue a year ago and probably will come up again. Sunshine law. As a creature of the legislature and of the council, I am well aware of how the Sunshine Law can impact the kind of job you want to do, and it impacts the administration as well. How the mayor can interact with you is limited in some respects by the Sunshine Law. So hopefully something good can come along that line. And then, as I mentioned, the 8-SAC package. So with that, I don't want to take all your time, or I hope I haven't taken too much time. Let me just open myself up to any questions that you might have, and I'll do the best to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. I'm going to start with, you said we could call on you. How do we do that? What is the best way to contact you? Email?
Okay, I expect to be a county employee sometime today.
Okay.
I turned in my final paper to prove I'm a citizen a couple of hours ago. So I will have a workstation in the mayor's office, both in Hilo and Kona. I will work primarily from home, and I can give you my home numbers. I'll have a cell phone, or you can contact the mayor's office, and I'll also be on the county email system. So I'm told my address will be andrew.levin@hawaiicounty.gov. So I'll be available that way as well.
Yeah, if you could provide that to us. I mean, we have a whole bunch of moving pieces ourselves, and including you in different email strings or just reaching out to you. And even if you're already at the legislature, if you could, help us with maybe popping your head in at a different representative's office, but knowing that you would be available, that would be extremely helpful. I just want to back up on some of the work that you did last legislative session. You mentioned that you prepared about 180 different testimonies. Do you know how many different issues those 180 different pieces of legislation?
I don't. I would guess between 50 and 75.
Okay, and that was respective to the House and the Senate?
Yes.
So were they tandem letters to the House and the Senate? Yeah.
Well, as you know, often the same
Right.
bill will come, or companion bill will come up in the House and the Senate, and we would of course testify on both bills and in similar fashion. And then as the bills work their way through or amended, we would want to comment on the amendments and whatever changes there were and try to either support or oppose depending on the issues.
Okay. And then do you know the success rate of all of, the 180, which we kind of filtered down to about 50, 60 different. Do you know the success rate of those?
At the close of my contract, I prepared a scorecard for the mayor. So that would be on his website, I think.
I'm just going to reflect on the contract from 2017. One of the statement of duties and responsibilities included, upon conclusion of this contract, provide a thorough review and analysis of the session as it pertains to the county's interest. Mm-hmm. You prepared that? I
would say it's kind of difficult to do a batting average of successes and failures. There are the bills that the mayor was interested in and that I lobbied on, either for or against, was never based on likelihood of success. It was based on genuine interest in the issue and whether the mayor felt we should support or oppose. So, for instance, the mayor, having grown up in a law using cesspools, believed that cesspools are okay for this island, and felt very strongly, and we testified against the prohibition on cesspools that will take effect, I think, 2050 or something. We testified against that bill knowing that it was a lost cause. It didn't matter. But I think that the scorecard would show which bills we testified on, whether we opposed or supported, and taking into account the fact that bills get amended and changed and massaged through the process, a rough analysis of whether we were successful or unsuccessful in terms of we were for it and the bill passed, we were for it and the bill failed, and the reverse.
If you could provide that to this body, that would be extremely helpful. I think everyone is always looking at ways to be efficient and work collaboratively. Regarding that cesspool, I had a very contrary opinion to that and wrote a very different letter from the mayor. Yep. So that brings up the point, like, how do we look for synergies? Clearly, there'll be times where a council member would not be in line with the administration. Mm-hmm. How do you stand in the middle of all of that, Mr. Levin?
Okay. I think on most issues, the council and the mayor will be very well aligned. But there were even times, there was at least one time, I don't remember what the issue was, where the two of our departments disagreed on an issue. And the mayor said they should testify as they on what they believe. So certainly that rule holds. I would hope that you would make your views known to the mayor. He would make his views known to you, and if a common position can be found, that would certainly be best. And again, the more synergy between our mayor and this council, as well as the other mayors and their councils, HSAC and other stakeholders, it makes our position that much stronger.
You mentioned having a little bit of a pulse line of what this legislative session would look like. You mentioned infrastructure, possibly TAT coming back, the transfer of property taxation. Help me with maybe a thumbnail sketch of what you think would be kind of at the top of that list.
In talking to the finance chair informally, she told me that the idea of getting the counties on board with respect to TAT on vacation rentals was something that she was hoping to accomplish. So that'll be a high priority. A year ago, the bill that would have taken some property tax and given it to Department of Education came very close to passage. I've got to believe that the same interests will be represented this year, and I don't want to predict an outcome. It's something that will very much impact the counties and that the counties have resisted, but the forces on the other side are quite strong too, so I suspect that'll be high on the list.
I promise I'm going to just have a couple more questions and then kind of bounce it over to anybody else, but hopefully come back. Did you get any indication from your informal meeting with, I guess I'm assuming it's Chair Luke, regarding the GE 0.5% and how that's going to weigh over at the legislature? I understand, I believe Kauai County moved forward sometime last month, and then I believe Maui County is looking at the option. Did she share with you, or was there any informal discussions on how that might impact us?
No, that did not come up.
Well, clearly, I'm out of time, so I'm going to yield at this time. Thanks.
Ms. Ruggles?
Thank you. I appreciate all your questions, Ms. Leloy. And I appreciate you being here to answer our questions before the legislative session starts. Really what I'm curious about is, like, what is your role as it relates to us, and how you determine what measures that you will take action on?
Well, as any other member of the administration, I'm working for the mayor, excuse me, and being supervised by Corp Counsel as well. So that's where I will get my direction. But recognizing the important role that you play as a council member, I would, of course, always be open to your input. And we met very briefly a year ago in Kona at the council, and I made the same offer. It may have sounded, just perfunctory, but I really do want to do what I can to further what the council sees as priorities as best I can.
Okay, thank you. So to be clear, you take everything that you take action on will come from either Corporation Counsel or the mayor's office, and that you welcome our input.
I think that'd be an accurate statement, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. That's all the questions I have.
Ms. O'Hara?
I just have some questions. There is, obviously, you're hired by the administration, so your marching orders are going to come from the mayor. And there are at least a few items that I didn't hear you mention, which I'm sorry to say are really high on the priority list for me and probably members of the council. I didn't hear you say anything about the need for an additional ambulance in Puna. We are at the top of the list, and we've been, legislation has been put forth in the last, I think, 3 sessions, and each time it goes down. And this is a really critical issue for us. We have the worst response times in the state and really need that second ambulance. So any help you can give there, I will be willing to jump on a plane and fly over. Another thing I didn't hear anything about was, well, we have quite a few environmental issues. While the mayor may have wanted testimony against cesspool prohibition, the fact that we have so many cesspools in the county of Hawaii has caused an impact on our ocean waters. We've had presentations on the increase of Staphylococcus in Hilo Bay, for instance, and elsewhere. So these are interrelated issues, and we need to start addressing the environmental impacts. While the mayor grew up in Ola'a and probably grew up on cesspool, the population at that time on this island was, 25% of what it currently is, maybe. So, if that. And so the impact of having this additional population, which is increasing at a very rapid rate, especially in my district, which has a high incidence of cesspool septic systems is really critical in the long term to our environmental impacts. Then there are things like rat lungworm disease, which got to the 11th and a half hour conference committee, and the money was not allocated for the research that's very much needed, and unfortunately isn't being used in the most productive manner. So those are issues that I hope you'll be on board with, or the administration will be on board with, and if you're not, at least feed some information to the council. I do know in the past the council has hired its own legislative lobbyist to go after the items that are of most concern to the council. Now, we're with HSAC, and we have some advice through consultants in that regard, but it has been the case in the past that we have actually, the council, hired someone to represent us at the state legislature. And given that there may be some difference of opinion or difference of priorities between the administration and the council, it could be something that we might want to consider again. But I would really appreciate if we could work with you. You have the background, you have the expertise. I've known you for I don't know how many years. It would be wonderful to have that synergy. Although I do realize that on some issues, administration and council are not going to be on the same page. So I just wanted to bring up those points, and yeah, thank you.
As I said, I think all infrastructure that will benefit the Big Island will be supported by the mayor, and that certainly includes the ambulance, if I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure I do. We were, excuse me, we did support the ambulance, we did support rat lungworm, we did support research into rapid ohia death, coqui frogs. So certainly those issues were up last year, and as our legislators strive to get funding for them this year, we will certainly be there supporting them.
Zioff?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for giving us a brief look at your background and your experience and qualifications to do this work. I appreciate hearing that. We have some of our legislative research branch provides the council with, they try and track bills that may affect our county or of interest to us. So we get lots of information from them on a regular basis. I'm just wondering if there's some way you can connect with that effort to provide, because sometimes we just get a list or a time frame or schedule, but maybe if more input, or you could provide more input to that so that we also see, well, here's something that, you know, is being lobbied for by, you know, Mr. Levin, so maybe we could send support testimony. We could kind of help us determine which would be of maybe the most help for a successful outcome by participating
I
that
work
way.
most closely with John Henricks, and if that's suitable, I will
Okay.
do that. I'll try to be even
Okay.
better at communicating back and forth with him.
Okay. Just one other observation is we've put together a HSAC package many times with not too much success rate. And the package, by the time it does get formulated, has had the mutual support of all 4 counties. You know, all 4 councils have to approve each item. So to think that those don't get traction is kind of beyond my comprehension. That seems to be something that the legislature should really look more seriously at. And I don't know if you really can help with that, but I'm glad that you mentioned that that's something you'll pay attention to as far as your efforts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Levin, again. Ms. O'Hara brought it up. You know, there's some issues in her district with the ambulance, those types of things. I'm going to put it on the table. Banyan Drive is going to be important for Hilo again. We need some revitalization to happen, not only at Banyan Drive, but all of the state leases within the industrial area. Those leases are expiring, and we need to figure out what we're doing. It's a huge economic generator. It carries all of our industrial lands. And for me, when I start looking and forecasting, how do we have industrial lands? How do we tax them? If we can't keep that thriving, we're going to see a huge decline in our real property tax collections, and we're going to have a very different forecast in our budget for the 2018-2019 cycle.
I certainly agree. It was a huge issue a year ago, and it should be on our radar screen this year. My question for you is whether there's a consensus on the path to take. There was, I think, at least 3 bills, maybe more, introduced by Representative Onishi, Senator Kahele. If, perhaps using your good auspices, you can get them and the community to a common position, that would make the effort a whole lot easier. No matter what we do, there will still be resistance for fear on the state part that we're setting precedent for the entire state. But our situation is at the point where leases will be expiring. People are afraid to invest. They don't want to just walk away. They don't want to put it out to bid where they might be outbid by who knows who. So finding a common position and getting our Big Island legislators all on the same page would be a tremendous accomplishment. If you can work on that, then we can all go forward together. I'm sure the mayor would be supportive if the community and the elected representatives were all together.
And I'm actually glad that our planning director is still in the room, because I know he has some fantastic ideas.
Mm-hmm.
In last legislative session, he and I really stood together on how a vision for that area.
Yep.
So yeah, let's do that, and we can set up a meeting separate and apart from that. You know, the word lobbyist has been thrown around a few times, and I know you mentioned it yourself. Have you registered as a lobbyist?
No, working for the county, I'm told I'm not a lobbyist, I'm a liaison, legislative liaison. But I was also told that as a county employee, I do not register as a lobbyist, even if I were a lobbyist.
Okay.
Good morning. Haole lahalo, everybody. My name is Joseph Camilla Miller, Corporation Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Kamelmela. You had heard Mr. Levin give his understanding, and I know you've had an opportunity to review both contracts from 2017 and 2018, which starts today, and both of them include language related to advising, delivering testimony, direct lobby to lawmakers on all county legislation with an emphasis on county priorities. His contract contains language that he is lobbying. How is that not a lobbyist?
You know, it's a different criteria. He's actually a county employee, so he's functioning, under the direction of both the mayor and I. So he's not really a lobbyist, although there's the language in there. No, he's not a.
So I'm going to refer to,
lobbyist.
thank you for that answer, because I'm going to refer to the definition under the state statutes 97-1, which clearly says to register as a lobbyist. Is there a lot of heartache if he doesn't? I just think it would go a long way to be more safe than sorry in the future. Or is that not the position of Corporation Counsel?
In the past, we had, we have researched a similar issue before. And, given that he's a county employee on, 89-day contract, he's not a lobbyist as defined under the state statute. So what he really does is, he's assisting us, with trying to track bills, trying to meet people, because there's a lot of people in the county, that also goes out and meet people, submit testimony, and he's only doing it for the county within his course and scope of duty. So, yeah, so we had researched that issue before, and then we came up with the conclusion: no, he doesn't have to register as a lobbyist. He's not a consultant. You know, he doesn't go out there and you know do what the other types of consultant does.
So following your train of thought, yes, we do, other department heads do, but normally it's a singular focus. DEM will advocate or lobby for issues related to the environment. A council member would lobby issues as it pertains to, but this is across the whole spectrum. I'm going to respectfully disagree because I don't think it hurts that he followed the state statutes. This mayor advocated for transparency in government, restoring trust in government. I really don't think it hurts. Maybe if you folks would reconsider, look at it, and maybe even reach out, you know, to the state Office of Information Practices and get an opinion. I just don't think it hurts. And if we want to start on fair foundation, that's my position. I just don't think it hurts. It goes a long way.
Well, you know, I can, you know, look at the issue again.
Yeah. Let's leave it there. Just revisit that issue one more time. And I really don't have very many questions, but I did have staff, Mr. Levin, take a look at all of your work and put together a scorecard for you and all the different pieces of legislation. So I'll be real interested to see what you come back with, because of 180 and with between the 50 and 60, I got 19 that got through. So I'll be looking forward to that. I'm going to yield at this time. Mr. Kamehameha, please just reconsider that issue. I would rather us as a county cover our bases and lead by example with our county employees, even if they're under an 89-day contract hire. So thank you.
When I was confirmed as the corp counsel, you know, I started to get, you know, a lot of emails, you know, on the different bills that's going through. So I'm just going to mention some of the bills, you know, that I've worked with Mr. Levin, which I thought was kind of important. You know, one of the bills involves some of the telecommunications efforts to try to put their equipment on county towers, and you know that kind of raised a big concern, you know, by the police, civil defense, you know, and also, you know, this idea of almost you know, having them put it up for free almost, you know, and so in the end it got defeated. There was another bill that both HR and I worked on, you know, dealing with the unions' goal in trying to get into management rights as being part of the negotiation. Well, that bill passed, but in the end, the governor, you know, had vetoed it. So, you know, it stopped there. So you know, so there it's a long ongoing process, but those are at least two of the bills that I'm kind of aware of that I worked with, and then the thing with the lifeguard liability too. You know, we're going to go back. You know, different strategy. You know, what happens in the legislature is that, you know, there's a bill that shows up and then all of a sudden it gets changed. So for the liability of the lifeguard, which I think is so important because both the mayor and this council is very supportive, you know. And so what happened last year I thought was a travesty, you know, when we trying to get something passed, and then what was compromised by the chair was to have the AGs defend the accountant's lifeguard, but that got vetoed, by the governor. So, to actually try to do a scorecard, it's hard, but like those are things that you never know how things gonna turn out. So, yeah, so we're gonna get the scorecard to allow to, and just a word of caution is that when you do ask Mr. Levin certain things, maybe he try not to add the other council members on the. It's just that I'm worried about the sunshine law, as much as everybody else, but hopefully something can be dealt with it. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Kamelamela, for those little revelations. Actually, in terms of a scorecard, what is it? Less than 10% of the bills that are introduced ever pass. So 19 out of 180. I think you're batting average there. So not so bad. Not so bad, really. But yeah, things take various tracks at the legislature, and I know, Andy, you've brought up the TAT several times, and that remains an important issue, and I do believe that the county wants to be on board in terms of identifying that our short-term vacation rentals, if we ever get around to defining them properly and whatnot here at the county, because we're a bit behind the other counties on this whole issue. I think we all agree that, yeah, it needs to be a level playing field and everybody needs to be paying into the TAT. Our problem is the way the allocation of the TAT came out of the special session. The counties won't gain anything from that increase in revenues at this point in time. So that has to change. And if it doesn't change, there's no incentive for us to really get on board, because it's going to require an increase in an investment in technologies in order to do this type of tracking, maybe additional positions, et cetera. So there's a cost to us to do so, and we need to weigh that going forward. So I just wanted to bring that up, and yeah, I would appreciate if you did send on your contact information, your phone and your cell phone, that sort of thing, because when the legislature gets moving, it moves fast. And speaking of which, you're on an 89-day contract starting today. I'm assuming that's going to be renewed, because otherwise you'll be leaving right after crossover. I don't know.
It's been made very clear I cannot assume anything.
You can't assume
beyond
anything.
89
Okay,
days.
so you got to work hard in the first 89 days. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming before us and providing some insight into what you perceive you'll be doing this year. That really helps. We were kind of in the dark last year quite a bit, and there isn't extremely good communication between the council and the administration regarding state legislative actions. So while we get good information direct through our LRB office as to what's going on, we don't have that inner tie. And so we were kind of clueless and only able to garner what we could read in the newspaper. So I'm really happy that you're more open to working with everyone at the county that is interested in legislation, especially our legislative body and policy setting body. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, and actually I wanted to thank Sue for having this opportunity, because as you know, he's now starting earlier than later. So mahalo.
I just want to say thank you for being here and affording us that opportunity to work together too. It's the mayor's budget, it's the mayor's money contract, and we're not putting anything into it, but offering to also take into consideration what we need in our districts and our concerns. And I was here when you first came to offer to meet with the different council members, and we really appreciate that, the open communication. So I just want to say thank you. And it was on our house couch that you slept in Powillo, but you also had a lot of black hair. And the beautiful wife. Thank you. But I do remember you as a little girl, so thank you.
Yeah, how old were you?
I don't know, I was little, but I remember you well with a painted car, and it was painted. I think it was hand painted or
Hand
yeah.
painted Dodge Dart.
Yeah,
with my name
but
on
thank you for being a part of, the community for as long as and all that you offer and that you give of yourself. So thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, just briefly, or maybe not briefly, but thank you for being here. Thank you, Ms. Leloy, for introducing this. This was a good opportunity to, I guess, reconnect and kind of go over how last year went, how this year is going to go, and kind of see the priorities of the administration. The council sets our priorities through either council action or through HSAC, and we kind of get really organized by a lot of those actions and the bills that we look to either support or I guess for us lobby on behalf of what we feel is important to Hawaii County. So I think it's really important that we connect with the administration on those specific efforts, because we don't want to be in a legislative session where both the administration and the council are kind of butting heads over a certain issue, because the state will, as you know, the state will look at Hawaii County saying, if you guys can't even agree within your own body, why are we going to support this? Or we'll just do whatever we think is best for the counties. So I think in that aspect, it's really, really important that we connect. And I know we might not always be on the same page, but I think it's really important that we try to make that happen. I know it's also really difficult during this small legislative or this very fast legislative session to do that, especially as a council, because it takes a long time to get things through. So I guess each individually we can push for efforts, especially, like the ambulance effort that we were trying to really hammer through last year. It's kind of crazy to me that the state tells the councils and the fire department and everybody that this is the way you guys need to get this passed, by supporting the Puna one and the Kauai one. Everybody gets on the same page and does exactly what they tell us to do, and then they don't fund it. It's just kind of crazy to me. But on those specific issues, district specific, I know the council members from those districts really push the effort, and you can connect with those ones on how, if that state legislative issue is specific towards those districts. But in terms of a whole, it really, us as HSAC, you see in our HSAC package, a lot of the items that are here that we're supporting this year were part of the support package from last year, because a lot of those didn't pass through. Some big issues like that tort liability was a mess, but something that we really pushed for because it was really, really important for our county to at least get that extension. So hopefully somebody can introduce a new bill this upcoming legislative session. But the TAT again, I'm sure they're going to be coming out with some new things, especially when they're raising, or the raise of the TAT started yesterday. I don't know, yesterday or the day before. I forget what day it was, but if they're not going to be at least raising the cap or giving the counties extra money, I know we're going to be going through some vacation rental things that I don't want to talk about now, but I know the state's really interested in looking at that. As a testifier previously brought up, the affordable housing is going to be another big issue that they're going to be going through this year. The senior housing, I know there's the support from Mr. Kawachi, down in Kau. That's going to be something that we're going to be supporting as well. So a lot of really important issues, but in the whole totality of things, people are wondering if they're getting what they pay for. That's what it comes down to. And when we hear these contracts that are so much money a month, it kind of like shocks everybody. But how do you measure that? How do you quantify that. You know, it's very difficult. You know, we can support and write letters every single day, and I don't know how you would measure that, but is the contract last year the same in terms of the budget wise, or is it different this year?
It's substantially. It's substantially less.
Okay. Well, yours might be the only pay that's gone down then. But you know, and that was another issue that we had. You know, the 89-day contract. With your advocating and writing letters, you know, what happens, you know, after that 89-day contract? You know, it's I know it's Powell, but the legislature still is in session doing all these things and still need to do the same exact thing that needed to happen before, you know. So in terms of the administration, once the 89 contract is Powell, what happens to the writing of the letters, the lobbying efforts, the you know, what was originally being done? How does that continue?
Well, I'm not too sure if I'm accurate, but I know that even if he starts today, he started already. You know, he started working, and from what I know of his work last year, you know, even if his contract ended, he continued to complete whatever needed to be completed. So budget-wise, yes, you know, it's substantially different from $16,000 a month to $10,000 a month. But our office had the budget to cover that, you know, due to the vacancies that we had. So.
Okay, so your time isn't only limited to the 89-day contract. You're really throughout this entire legislative session working for the county-ish. But so within that 89-day contract, you're the county employee. Outside of the 89-day contract, who are you?
I guess I'm a citizen of the county of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Volunteering your time.
I guess.
Volunteer.
Hopefully not, but
He's volunteering. He's
Okay.
not a
the
lobbyist.
mayor's
I
a
know
tough,
that.
the mayor's a tough person to say no to.
No, I'm sure you guys are good friends from far back in the day. So I think he picks people that he truly can trust and work with.
Well, and, you know, I think you've been hinting at it all along, but just to make it explicit, the help from you as council members, as elected officials, goes a long, long way toward success at the legislature. So please do what you can to build up relationships in person, by phone, whatever. We all know the disadvantage that we have being an airplane away from the Capitol and not being there. So please help make this a successful operation.
And it's extremely difficult on that point. You know, we have to pay $100 or $200 to get to Oahu to be present. And, you know, many times the legislature basically requires you to be present. They want you there, even though many times I've been there, and you know, just being present, they say, okay, thank you for being here, but then, you know, recess the meeting till tomorrow. And, you know, that's $200 down the drain that you really thought you were going to make a difference in advocating on behalf of your constituents. But then you wonder if you got to come back again, if it's going to happen again. So it's very difficult to balance between your letters or being present and knowing when these action items are really going to be action. You know, they're going to take action on them. But I think, you know, each individual council member knows how they can best lobby for their districts. I know we've had in the past, as Ms. O'Hara said, lobbyists represent the councils at the legislative session. I don't know how long ago that was, but we kind of weigh and balance how much it's worth to do that. Or are we the best lobbyists as council members to fight for what we think our constituents need the most especially on Hawaii Island? So that's something that we all balance out, but at least, you know, we have an 8SAC group that we really are pretty tight with the rest of the councils and can have a huge impact. Well, we hope to think that we have a huge impact on legislation at the state level. So we're going to continue to do that. There might be different avenues we try to take, as you know, in lobbying, but we hope that we always try to do the best that we possibly can in representing our county. So in that case, you know, really work with us, you know, you being a representative of the mayor, in how we try to get what we need for Hawaii County. So I'm looking forward to that. And you know, I'm also president of 8SAC, so it's a good opportunity for all of us to really collaborate, not only here on Hawaii Island with the council and the administration, but the whole state. So I'm willing to do that, and just kind of looking forward to a more positive legislative session for not only the entire state, but Hawaii County.